Well, hello everybody. It's the Gary Neville Podcast, live from Old Trafford with Jamie Carragher, naturally for this occasion, guesting too. Straight to it, Gary. You were so eager in the summer to move the narrative on from Manchester United's perspective. This doesn't do that, does it?
No, not at all. It was a nightmare day, really. Nightmare, not because Manchester United have lost the game, that can happen in obviously any game of football, but more the way in which the first half, and I think the impact of Casemiro going off at half time, and a great player like he is, and I'm just thinking about how he'll be there now in that dressing room and the rest of his teammates. I mean, it will have had a big impact on his teammate because, you know, from what I hear, he's very, very popular with the rest of the players, and he's been a sort of big character in the dressing room. And when they know that one of your teammates is suffering like that in the first half, obviously he had a really terrible experience out there. He made a couple of mistakes, and then he did a couple of things after that, and the crowd started to get onto him a little bit as well. And then they've left him behind in the dressing room, and they come out in the second half. I just think that it adds to the sort of, if you like, difficulty of the day and the challenge of losing, because you go back in there now and you've got one of these players that's been subbed and hooked at half time. Yeah, it's a really bad day. Bad day for the players, bad day for obviously the fans, bad day for the new ownership, who I think have invested heavily this summer in bringing in more players that I think Erik ten Hag wants, and it's a bad day for Erik ten Hag.
I want to talk to you, if I may, about the sort of humanity of it all.
Yeah.
And the difficulty. I know we've had this conversation before about what it's like to be a Manchester United player, particularly when it's not going well. In particular, in the context of Casemiro, to whom you've already referred, and you were joking at half-time, self-effacingly, about your West Brom moment and all of that. What would you say to him? And what would you also say to Marcus Rashford, who, when he wasn't taken off, you know, was getting gypped from the crowd, and who's a human being who presumably wants to do well, and anybody in any job knows what it is to be going to work when you don't think they rate me, you know, and it's hard, and it's like an ever-decreasing circle.
There's only, to be fair, in my experience, a couple of things that you can do, and that's, to be fair, seek the support of people around you who can basically make you feel better. I think that's the number one thing. And the next thing is the thing that, to be fair, is the basics of life, and that's turn up again tomorrow morning, do the very best that you can, don't give in, and make sure the day after that you do the same again. They're the really basics of life, because those lads have got to come in tomorrow morning, they've got to have their ice baths, they've got to have the stretches, they've got to eat well tonight, they've got to prepare for the next game. Obviously, they might not have the next game now because of the international break, but you know those basics, and you know, get find some solace in your work that you do, that you've worked thousands and thousands of hours from the age of 5, 6 years of age to be a football player. And did you think every day was going to be a good day? Did you think you weren't going to make mistakes? Did you think that you weren't going to cost your team in a big game? And if you ask yourselves those questions and put it into perspective, you can somehow then find obviously a bridge to be able to get over to the other side and build from. And that's how I, to be fair, always took things in my life. There comes to a point where my West Brom game, and I don't think this was a West Brom moment for Casemiro, because he's obviously got 2 and 3 years in his contract, he's 32, but it felt like a very difficult day. My West Brom was my ultimate last game for the club. I knew when I walked off the pitch in whatever it was, the 56th minute, I knew I was not coming back on that pitch for Manchester United again. I knew I was finished. And it did feel a little bit like that for Casemiro in the first half because of the way in which the fans reacted. But it's a bad day all round, and there is a human side to it. And I think as you get older, you recognise that. But it's also a very brutal, clinical business. And the Manchester United fans at the end there have spoken with their feet, because there's probably only 20,000 left in the stadium at the end. They're heartbroken getting beat 3-0 at home by Liverpool. They've had enough. They've only won once against Liverpool in the Premier League in the last 13 games. There's been hope and promise this summer, and they've been hit hard with a punch early in the season, last week at Brighton and this week against Liverpool. So it's a difficult day. Look, I still think there's some calm needed here. I do think that the ownership will be calm. I don't think they'll panic. I think there'll be an element of, look, just let this bed in, let the new players bed in. They're still quite new together, and let's see where we are in 3 or 4 months' time. There'll be all hell breaks loose tonight. There'll be questions asked of everybody. But I think, to be fair, the reality of it is, you know, it's not the right time now to start asking the question about the manager. He does need some time with these players, and give him some time to the end. There are worries, there are concerns, there's no getting away from that, and there are issues. But let him at least have a chance to be able to go and deal with it and sort of, if you like, get it right. He's found in the first 2 years at the club the right results at the moment that he needed. He's won trophies, which shouldn't be sniffed at. So can he do something in the next 3 or 4 months to somehow stumble upon something because I don't think it's going to come by design at this moment in time. Stumble upon something that becomes quite special and they get a connection of some kind. That's what I'm hoping for.
I mean, you're talking about stumbling on something. I know your famous phrase, it's Man United, but I think a team of this stature, the money they spend in the transfer market, you can't be stumbling on something. What are they going to stumble on? I mean, what is
a way of playing, something that sort of happens that connects. I mean, Carra, look, I'm not saying it's the right way to go about it. No,
the way the game's played now, the teams don't stumble. Liverpool aren't stumbling on something with Arne Slot. Pep Guardiola's not stumbling on something. Jurgen Klopp's not. Jose Mourinho's type of football. There's different ways of playing. The fact that we're talking about stumbling on something with Erik ten Hag. I mean, if we're being brutally honest, I mean, Ineos have come in. They bottled the decision in the summer in terms of the manager. If they wanted to keep...
They bottled the decision.
They've not
bottled the decision.
Danny, you know they did, and I know they did.
Carra, they've looked to find another manager. They've openly gone and done that. They've gone through a process. They've not found the manager that they wanted to bring in. So what do you want them to do? Go and bring somebody else they don't want in?
So what I'm saying is, you make that decision, you don't have this 2-week period at the end of the decision. They must have known or been reviewing the season as it was going on. Now, I understand when you win the last game against Man City in a cup final, it's very difficult to change your manager. To leave the manager for 2 weeks while you're round talking to agents and other managers.
But Carra, in the summer, Liverpool ended up with a third choice manager. Barcelona and others in Bayern Munich were struggling to get the first choice manager. There was a manager sort of merry-go-round that was a struggle for all the big clubs in Europe, and Manchester United thought we better stick with what we've got. The fans
why did it take them 2 weeks at the end of the season? Surely any top club is, if they're thinking about changing
Liverpool
the manager,
didn't get their first choice. Arne Slot's not Liverpool's first choice.
It doesn't matter whether he was or he wasn't. It was the process of doing it.
Liverpool knew for 6 months that Klopp was leaving.
Listen to me. They said, we're reviewing the season, and it took them 2 weeks.
Carra,
I've never heard
Liverpool
a club...
had 6 months to replace Jurgen Klopp.
No. Stop trying to defend the ownership.
I'm not trying to defend them.
And they stuck with a manager who they wanted to change.
Liverpool and
look
clubs,
at the start that you had.
Bayern Munich, Liverpool and other clubs that are great clubs that have been more successful than United in this last 10 years have tried to find managers in the summer and have been down to the second and third and fourth and fifth choices. Manchester United could not get a manager they wanted, just like Liverpool ended up with a third choice, having 6 months to find a replacement to Klopp.
You're not getting it.
What I'm saying is
they don't get to the summer and then decide on the manager. They should have known this thing that they reviewed the season. You're reviewing the season as the season's going on. They should have known if we lose to probably Man City, there's a good chance he's going to go. If he wins, we announce it on the Monday morning, we're sticking with Erik ten Hag. You're not flying around Europe speaking to agents and other managers about changing. Would you do that at Salford?
I've been the most critical. No, there's a fine line though, and I'll tell you why there's a fine line. Going approaching other managers whilst the current manager in situ is difficult. No, hang on a minute. It's difficult because it gets around now with the agents and the way in which they talk. Secondly, Barada and Ashworth were not in situ, and I'm not saying that they couldn't have a conversation with them, but they had to be very careful about getting those two people into the club. They had Jason Wilcox doing an assessment of what was going on with the coaching staff. Now, it's not ideal because what they've done with Erik ten Hag is keep him, but they've actually made him change his backroom staff, or they've influenced it, I suspect. That again is not ideal. It's not perfect. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but other great clubs were trying to find a manager in the summer. Tuchel was leaving Bayern Munich early. Klopp was leaving Liverpool early, and they struggled to find managers, even though there was an open sort of season that you knew that they were going to try and find managers. Manchester United still had the season going on. I think it's difficult, and I've been in this situation at Salford. When you think of sacking a manager, you're very nervous about basically going sort of, if you like, approaching other managers and feeling unprofessional morally. And I think, to be fair, the owners of Manchester United would have felt the same way. So I understand what you're saying, but other great clubs in the summer found it difficult to appoint new managers, and I think Manchester United found it difficult as well. And that's why they ended up staying with Erik ten Hag after they won the final against City. No.
Any top club, if you know better than me, don't be so naive to think clubs aren't speaking to other managers around Europe, speaking to players. It happens all the time. They do it with agents. Do you think Liverpool weren't doing, or do the top clubs? You know, and I know, they didn't want to keep Erik ten Hag and they couldn't find anyone better.
Right,
they didn't want to keep him.
Liverpool and Bayern Munich both had permission to speak to other managers because their managers knew they were leaving, and they couldn't get their first, second and third choices. So my point is, it was obviously difficult for a lot of clubs in the summer, and United found it difficult as well.
Should we talk about Liverpool?
No.
Okay.
The Gary Neville Podcast, we'll talk about United.
How good were they, Jamie?
Yes, they were very good. You think about talking about a different Liverpool, but a lot of what we saw certainly in the first half is what we've seen here for a lot of the time when Liverpool have come here where they're breaking through midfield, running at the defence, and initially I thought Manchester United's two centre-backs dealt with situations really well, just getting them out of jail, but eventually you felt something would fall to someone. and it felt like it was coming. And yeah, I mean, I think it's huge for the manager, this result. Managers of these clubs will always be defined by the biggest games, whether that's a cup final or derby games that matter. Now, I'm not saying the first 2 games didn't matter, but it was great to get off to a really good start. And who knows, you need a little bit of luck. That first half at Ipswich can go 1-0 up, and before you know it, you draw that game 1-1, and there's already questions being asked. But they got through that first half at Ipswich. They win a game at home that they should win, and then they come here, and this is just a huge result. And I say again, for the manager, you've got to imagine, obviously 2 of them from Holland, probably the press interest of this game as well, the friends and family, knowing it's a huge test. Now, they'd never admit it, but to get one over on a compatriot, your biggest rival, I think for Arne Slot going forward, I think it's absolutely huge.
Yeah, I before the game, did a Sky Sports News interview where I said for Arne Slot, he's got 2 big challenges this season. One is when he has his first difficult period, that basically influencing the players and trying to convince them that, I think David Moyes used the best analogy or best description of this when he said about it felt like I was the stepdad going into the house to influence the children, but they were still listening to the dad. And I suspect there's an element of the Liverpool players who had such great respect and trust in Jurgen Klopp that he's got to build that respect and that trust, and that'll be really, really difficult. And Liverpool fans are singing his name now behind, so he's got to convince the fans, but he's got to convince the players. That will really help today in terms of just the idea that obviously he's trying to establish. Winning a big game is really helpful. And the other one that I said was a challenge for him was, obviously, as the season goes on, he's Trent Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk and Salah's contracts, which not for today, but they are 3 huge players, and he's got to obviously think about that in the short to medium term. So today's a big result for Arne Slot. To come here to Old Trafford, not an easy thing to go and win 3-0. I did think I thought the first 20 minutes, I actually liked some of the things that Manchester United were doing. I thought they were compact, thought they were aggressive. But what this Manchester United team have in the last 2 to 3 years, and it isn't going away, is that they don't handle adversity quite well. There's a moment in the game, and I can't remember what it was. It's sometimes a spike, and I think Trent sort of changed his position. I don't know even if that was the case. It felt like Trent changed his position. They started to get some passes through into midfield, and Xerxes and Fernandes started to look over at each other as if to say, which one's going to go now? And something changed for them, and it became all of a sudden a difficult match for them. And then you're talking about, have you got the quality? And Mo Salah, to be fair, in this fixture, I've said it so many times, he is a different level. Liverpool have got a lot of very good players. Manchester United have got some good players, but he is a different level. Honestly, a different level.
Jamie, can I ask both of you on that, on Mo and the other 2 big players that Gary mentioned who are coming into their last year now? Watching Salah, this is only my impression, you guys will know much more, but he looks like either someone who's determined to go out in a blaze of glory, or has no intention of going anywhere, thank you very much, because he's having a lot of fun. Is it true as a player that last year in some sense plays into your head?
I'm not sure it will be his last year. I think Mo Salah is a little bit like Ronaldo. I don't think Mo Salah I think he's 32, 33. And more often than most footballers think 35 the time to sort of finish. I think Mo Salah will be looking at his late 30s. I think he'll be winding down then in his head. So I think for him, he'll want to break every record he possibly can, either in the Premier League or with Liverpool. And just thinking how good he's been. Now, there's lots of players, wingers if you like, or wide forwards, who've got more medals than him. I'm just trying to think now, there'd be very few, if any, wide players. I mean, you'd obviously talk about Ryan Giggs, but I think a part of Giggs' strength was the actual longevity. But when you actually think of the actual quality, the numbers of the goals, you think of Ronaldo here for Manchester United. But maybe Mo Salah's been here longer than Ronaldo. I think he's right up there alongside Ronaldo as maybe the best winger we've seen, or wide forward we've seen in the Premier League history. He's not just a Liverpool legend, I think he's a Premier League legend, and I think he's aware of his status, and I find it very difficult to see Mo Salah in the Saudi League, if, for instance, next season. He's playing that well at one of the biggest clubs in the world, and I think that the sign of Chiesa is important, because there was probably for the first time last season, there was a lot of talk of Mo Salah. Towards the end of the season, he wasn't the same. He'd had an injury in the African Nations Cup, and there was talk, would you take the 80 to 100 million now if Saudi came in? I actually think if Chiesa starts 15 games this season, and Mo Salah's playing a season of 35 to 40 rather than over 50 games, as he always does, because he's so durable, he never gets injured, I think Mo Salah, what we saw today, can still play for another 2 or 3 years for Liverpool if he doesn't have to play every single minute of every single game. So I think the arrival of Chiesa, I think, is very important in terms of Salah as well, because I still think there's a lot of miles in him.
It's just a different level. To be able to deliver that cross with his right foot to the back post, I think he's in a moment in his career now where he's seen everything. He's got a year to go, and I think with a year to go, sometimes in players there's a freedom with that actually I can enjoy it. You know, I can relax. I've done everything that I can at Liverpool, and if I stay, great. If I leave, then okay, I've done my very best. So I think that he's in such a good moment at this moment in time. Obviously, he does stay fit. He didn't have the best end to the season, but he's still just... I always think when you say about reliability and consistency, that is the number one trait I think that you want in a football player or anybody that you work with in life. And he is so consistent and reliable, but not at just like a 6 and 7 out of 10 at this level. That is so difficult.
Yeah, I think he's getting very close to Kenny Dalglish and Steven Gerrard in terms of, you know, Liverpool greats, you know, in the past. And certainly attacking players. And you think it's sort of Stevie and Kenny. There's always that debate between the older generation of fans and the new, obviously the younger ones. Who's the best player to ever play for Liverpool? And it probably splits Liverpool supporters. I think, hopefully, in the next 2 or 3 years, I think Mo Salah comes into that equation.
Let's just finish perhaps by putting this into the context of the whole weekend. In other words, Arsenal and that quite fractious game against Brighton, Manchester City, I mean, just imperious again. I mean, brilliant again last night. So how do you reflect on that with United and with Liverpool?
It's very early in the season. I don't change anything that I've said sort of 3 weeks ago off the back of what I've said today.
You changed Spurs in your top 4.
No, I changed that in the first day of the season when I just... That's fine.
Man, you still in your top 4?
They are at the moment, yeah. I'm hoping that they get something right in the next few months and they bed these new players in, and Ugarte and Højlund come back and they have that sort of energy and that spirit about them that I think they can... Look, Manchester United have not been terrible in the first 3 games. They made 3 really bad errors today for those goals. I mean, really bad errors. Liverpool deserved to win. But the errors that Casemiro made in that first half, giving the ball away in those areas, I mean, you're going to be struggling in this day and age. Every team has to play out from the back. Every team has to be comfortable on the ball. And if you give it away in those areas against this type of team, you're going to lose. So they made really bad errors today. I thought there were things in the first 15, 20 minutes that I thought were actually quite encouraging. So there's a long way to go yet in terms of what we're seeing. I don't think we decide anything this weekend, but it does ramp up the pressure on Erik ten Hag. There are things that obviously have happened at Manchester United where the players don't seem to be able to perform at the highest level. That's not just been under Erik ten Hag, that's been under the managers over the last 10 years. I was saying before about the wingers before the game. You know, Di Maria came here and had to leave. Sancho's now come here and had to leave. You know, Anthony's here at 80 million. There are 3 players at 70, 80 million pounds that have been signed in wide areas. And you know, it has been a difficult place for players to settle in for some reason. And on the other side of it, Marcus Rashford, a player who's homegrown, who's now finding it difficult. So you think, well, there's no sort of pattern to it. Every player that seems to struggle, it seems to be I don't use the word graveyard, I used that a few years ago, but the idea that you come here and the pressure seems to build on players. There's only really Bruno, Martinez maybe, Dalot I think is doing okay now, but there aren't many players who've come here in the last 10 years that have really thrived and sort of grown and built in stature their careers. It's a real difficult place, and we've got to get through that as a club. United have got to get through that. I don't think it's always been down to the manager, because Van Gaal, Mourinho and others have been good managers, great managers in their careers. Erik ten Hag got a tune out of his players at Ajax. So I think for me this weekend it's about calm. I think at Manchester United there'll be a lot of noise. I think it is about calm. I don't think it's about getting carried away and saying Manchester United are out the top 4 and Liverpool are going to win the league and all these things. I mean, these things could happen, but I feel like it's just early in the season and the international break's needed for Manchester United, no doubt about that.
And a final word on Liverpool in the context of City and Arsenal this weekend?
Yeah, it was a blow for City, for Arsenal, what happened this weekend. I think you could see that the reaction of Mikel Arteta.
Sending off Declan Rice?
You know what? You can't argue when you look at the letter of the law. For me, I'd like the referee to use a little bit of game management, get the 2 of them together really quickly, get the game going. And I don't think anyone would have made too big a deal about the fact that, you know, neither of them have been booked. I think they were both at it a little bit. Declan Rice went down probably a little bit too easy. I think the player for Brighton knew there was no real pass on. He's probably almost trying to get each other booked, really. So for me, I don't think they can argue it, but I'd like to have seen it maybe a little better game management from the referee.
Yeah, I thought it was soft. I think, do you know, when I think that, and I used to get frustrated by delay in the game. Obviously, we played here at Old Trafford quite often when we were chasing games, and teams would take time waste, or they kick the ball away and stuff like that. If a player kicks it away in anger against the referee's decision, I think it should then be a booking. If a player really prolongs, or there's a delay where and you can see them boot it away, I think if it's so quick and it's just a react, it's almost like one of those things where you've sort of like got in front of a free kick and you just go like that, and it's a little tap. I don't know. I mean, I know you can't differentiate sometimes between it, and I know it's the law, but it did feel soft to me, that sending off. But the reality of it is what it is. I mean, ultimately, it's we're all going to get bad decisions in a season, but Arsenal, I think the fans will be aggrieved. They are aggrieved, obviously. I think that the manager will be, because I'd hate to get sent off for that. I mean, but
and of course, sadly for him, it means he misses the North London derby.
Yeah, and that's a great game to look forward to in a couple of weeks.
That's your favourite fixture, isn't it?
He takes the mickey out of it, but actually,
every time he does that game, this is my favourite.
Honestly, I never thought that North London derby. I said this. I
You
thought
don't have to do it again.
I thought the North London derby was a little bit sort of like flaky, like 10, 15 years ago. It's like Arsenal Man United was a bigger game.
This has become flaky, hasn't it? This one.
But actually, to be fair, it's one of my favourite games that I've done at Sky, if not my favourite. It's been a brilliant game every time I've done it. This game, to be honest with you, gets harder to do every single year. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Liverpool aren't exactly prolific in winning titles or anything, but it's just, I don't know. That I was expecting, but I don't think. I don't think you thought Manchester United would get done 3-0 today, did you? You didn't think Liverpool would win 3-0. None of us did, and that's the disappointment of today, is that they've capitulated a little bit and sort of gone under.
You're talking about the North London derby?
Yeah, North London derby. No, but what I'm saying to you, I'm just going back to that game and thinking that they don't handle adversity well. United.
They're not a well-coached team. End of story.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all over the place.
Well, listen, the good news is for you, Gary, that Liverpool don't play Manchester United again until I think January the 4th. And
we're skiing then, aren't we?
I'm
away. I'm away.
And your favourite fixture is only a fortnight away.
It is.
So Arsenal Spurs is what we have to look forward to when we all come back. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you.